totally free. Just
Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed that little Thursday Night Football deep dive, jumping the gun a little bit in terms of our betting preview, as always. But now, we are continuing with my positional rankings for this week 5 of the NFL season, who I think the players will be in terms of shining for you in your fantasy team. And we're going to look at the wide receivers to start off today. And all 5 of these guys that I've compiled are weird in that, there are some stars on here, but there are also players who I feel like a lot of people might underappreciate or undervalue in fantasy as well. But they're still difference makers for your fantasy football team. They still set the tone for your fantasy football team. On any given Sunday, these guys can shine out for you. There is one kind of long shot that I'm holding out on this weekend. It's going to depend on who his quarterback is. But I'm confident in all of these guys to kind of set a nice tone for your fantasy team, to get you off on the right foot in week 5. Without further ado, let's jump right into them. Starting off with a guy who's playing tomorrow night, Mike Evans against the Falcons. It's going to be a fascinating match. I'm going to talk about this matchup a little bit later in my shadow report. But at the end of the day, Mike Evans is always a fascinating player to watch. A paragon of consistency, as I like to say. 23.4 fantasy points last week against Philly. And it's just going to continue to show in these more competitive games why he's the most competent player in them as well. He's the difference maker still. And not for nothing, Baker is trusting him even more than he did last season, which is a scary proposition because last season, Mike Evans still put up 1,000 yards, and it was his 10th straight season in doing so. And this is a future Hall of Famer who games like this are becoming routine to. He's seen a lot of different quarterback play over the years, whether it be erratic, whether it be confident, whether it be Super Bowl winning, like with Tom Brady. And now, more than ever, it's weird saying this because he did have Tom Brady at the quarterback position, but this connection between him and Baker Mayfield is the most magical there's been. And I'm not saying this lightly because they still have a long way to go, and this next stretch of games will prove to me if, I can take the Bucs legitimately as a contender in the NFC and potentially to make a deep run in the postseason. But right now, just know that Mike Evans, more often than not, will still be a fascinating fantasy option for you in whatever game he's playing. On any given Sunday, Mike Evans has a chance to go off, and he will continue to do so as long as this connection between him and Baker is electric as always. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think in the comments about this, because Mike Evans has been, like I said, a paragon of consistency both in real life and fantasy football. So, it's ultimately up to you how you view him and how you view this matchup, but he can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with him. The next player I have on this list is a guy who's really coming to his own. I was really surprised when I first saw my full kind of Commanders game with what this guy brought to the table. Terry McLaurin. I feel like, I was kind of down on the Commanders' offense after the Dotson deal that saw him go to Philly. And I was worried that Terry McLaurin, even though he would have a lion's share of targets, would have an unnecessary weight placed on his shoulders while with breaking in a rookie quarterback and, this new look offense that's more college style than anything. And he really has surprised me and shocked me as being one of the more electrifying fantasy wide receivers out there. 18.2 fantasy points against Arizona, following up an impressive performance against Cincinnati as well. And now going into this game against the Cleveland Browns defense that is really reeling, not as good as it has been in 2023 when it was really the best unit in the league. This year, they're just settling on being pretty average at best. And I feel like what I appreciate about the Commanders' offense, at least for now, is that it's one of the more timely college-style offenses I've ever seen. They protect the football. No mistakes from rookie Jaden Daniels so far. Not many. He had a pick in last game, though. And most importantly, these are all high percentage throws that Jaden Daniels is comfortable with making, mixed in with a couple deep shots to Terry McLaurin as well. We saw in the game against Cincy, for the most part, Jaden Daniels played it safe. But just know that him and Terry McLaurin had that big playability in them. Terry McLaurin is still a field-stretching wide receiver first and foremost, and it's going to show up against the Browns. He's going to try and really get at that experienced Browns secondary that, for the most part, has been decent this season. As decent as they can be in a defense that's kind of reeling up front. But I still think Terry McLaurin will win this matchup, and he's going to consistently win a lot more matchups as the season goes on, should Jaden Daniels continue to be very efficient, very composed, and most importantly, on schedule with this offense. I still have my trepidations about how this offense will look down the stretch. They have some tough games coming up, but ultimately this is a very manageable schedule. So it's going to really be down to how Cliff Kingsbury handles, perhaps the pressure put on Jaden Daniels as the season progresses, and should he continue to be a very composed presence at the QB position for them. But Terry McLaurin is still someone who is impressing each and every single week in fantasy, and that you should always try and start if you haven't. Next guy I want to talk about saw his stock rise a little bit with the injury to Christian Watson, and I'm going to talk about in the next segment a little bit how this affects some other skill positions as well, the Christian Watson injury. What Jaden Reed I really like. He's still, at the end of the day, even with Christian Watson on the team and healthy, is their wide receiver one, in my humble opinion. 27.1 fantasy points against the Vikings. He will be, by and large, someone that Jordan Reed will go to early and often. Great route runner, solid in the red zone, always someone who's just a reliable receiver. Not one true trait sticks out that makes Jaden Reed special, but it's just that his abilities in this offense and the trust that this team has in him as their wide receiver one, and the trust Jordan Love has in him in return, is becoming something that is undeniable in terms of the connectivity this team has. And so, this is a Rams defense that, is still coalescing and still progressing. They're incorporating a lot of new pieces into that unit. I think that they're going to take advantage this week. And Jaden Reed, not for nothing, was already getting the lion's share of targets. Look for him to get close to 14 to 15 targets in this game. That's how effective that I think Jordan Love will try to be in getting in the football. And it's going to continue to work. I don't think, that connection is going to be stopped. Yes, I would love to see, Wicks get involved, Dobbs get involved. I'm going to talk about the tight ends a little bit in my next segment. But at the end of the day, Jaden Reed is the guy right now for this Packers team. He's going to be the guy for you in fantasy for many weeks. He is kind of matchups oriented, and you're going to have to worry about that a little bit. But for now, just know that Jaden Reed sticks out as the wide receiver one, and he's going to get a lot of touches. The final one I have in this graphic here is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf has definitely been very impressive as a Seattle fan. This is perhaps his best start to a season we've seen. I'm not even joking. Multiple 100-yard games, keeping Geno on schedule, really showing a lot of depth to his route tree, and most importantly, allowing many other weapons in the Seattle offense to shine. DK isn't just excellent at receiving himself. He's excellent at setting up others in this offense to contribute. We've seen contributions up and down the board from JSN, from Tyler Lockett still, from AJ Barner, from Pharaoh Brown, from Noah Fant, and it's all because of the matchup problem DK poses to opposing defense. This week, it's a Giants team that is strong in the secondary. I'm talking about that Deontay Banks matchup that DK will face in the last segment of today's show. But at the end of the day, DK's dominance, both physically and in terms of the mental strain he puts on opposing corners in terms of how to account for not just him, but how to slow down the entire Seahawks pass attack, really is someone. As T Money enters the chat, welcome to you yet again, T Money. It's been a long time coming. How are you, my man? Glad to have you back. Asking about a trade offer. Trade worthy for DJ Moore. This is a very interesting question. It can be answered in many different ways. But at this current moment, I feel like when you take stock of both the Chiefs and Bears offense, the Bears offense certainly seems like it's trending up, but I'm not taking too much stock in a win where, Caleb Williams looked better and he looked more comfortable distributing the ball, but I still have trepidations about him trying too much in that offense. Whereas the Chiefs now have a weirdly unique opportunity to really open up this offense outside of what they were doing with Rashee Rice. And Xavier Worthy is still a big play threat. He's not your prototypical wide receiver 1, which he now has to be. But he is someone who can make big plays happen out of nothing. So this is a very difficult question. But that being said, I see no reason as to why this trade can't work for you. I feel like DJ Moore is someone who, at the end of the day, Caleb Williams is going to have to trust in order to progress. He is, in my opinion, the top receiver in that wide receiver room. And he's going to be integral to how Caleb Williams develops as a passer because he was the one who was, quote-unquote, the lifetime Bear when he came in. Keenan Allen wasn't always a Bear. Romadunze just got here. So DJ Moore is going to have to show his experience in the Bears system to really help Caleb Williams develop even more. That trade could work for you, but it is risky because what Xavier Worthy can be now that the Chiefs' offense is sans Rice. But I still think this trade can work. So I will say, if you're comfortable in this trade, go for it, my man. But we got another trade, or a starting conundrum, from 4KT Owen. Welcome to the show, my man. Start Najee Harris or Kareem Hunt. Two very interesting running backs to consider starting. Because Najee Harris, I feel like, is someone in this Pittsburgh offense who should feel more valuable than he is right now. But I haven't seen that value really ascend and really add stock to what Najee Harris could bring to this Pittsburgh offense. Because the Pittsburgh offense feels like a unit where you kind of take advantage of Justin Fields' best traits, but you're also kind of ignoring what gets you good yards in the first place, and that's Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren runs. You get what I'm saying? Whereas Kareem Hunt, he's someone who I don't really trust in this Chiefs offense as much as I feel I should, because I don't necessarily think the Chiefs want to utilize that running game as much, even with Pacheco. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they use the run as a way to try and diversify their game script a little bit. They don't necessarily use it often enough to convince me that a Chiefs running back should start on your fantasy team. So by default, I would say Najee Harris should be your start going forward, but it really is an awkward decision because neither of them really stand out in their respective offenses as much as I would like them to, if you get what I'm saying. But still, if that's the question on the table, I would start Najee Harris. And then T-Money says, bet good, then my wide receivers will be Chase, CeeDee Lamb, DK, DJ Moore, and Jameson Williams. So that would be a fantastic wide receiver room for you. Good luck with both of you on your fantasy football exploits this week, as always. But getting back to the matchup problem that DK Metcalf can propose to the Giants, he is a very physical kind of guy that really will put stress on a Giants defense that can be opportunistic at times, but at times can be gashed. And then the final guy that I want to talk about, this is my long shot guy. And I could really have mentioned anyone from this wide receiver room, to be honest with you, because they're going up against one of the most anemic secondaries in the league. I'll pick an Alec Pierce versus the Jags. As a guy who, as a long shot option for you, could be an interesting start. And if it's Joe Flacco starting for the Colts, look for there to be a lot more big plays in this offense. Both him and Pittman, like I said, will line up in the perimeter more often than not. Actually, Alec Pierce at 77% does align more in the perimeter, more often rather, than Michael Pittman Jr., so look for him to be a vertical threat in this game, really put pressure on a very weak Jag secondary, even with guys like Darnell Savage and Ronald Darby. Just very weak overall in terms of trying to generate takeaways. So look for not just Alec Pierce, but this entire Colts wide receiver room potentially feast on the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. Always look for that one matchup that you feel is kind of pushing it, but can still get you a lot of points. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you to Team Money and 4KT Owen for these comments as well. But coming up next, we transition to the tight ends. Which tight ends do I think will shine in Week 5? Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.